Good afternoon and good morning to our West Coast listeners. My name is Juan Thomas, and I have the honor of serving as chair of the ABA Civil Rights and Social Justice section. And today, as we kick off and celebrate Black History Month, I am so honored and humbled to have an icon and living legend of our legal community, but also of America, none other than Mr. Dennis Archer. Mr. Archer, welcome. We're so glad to have you.
Mr. President and Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be with you.
Well, thank you. As I hope everyone who's listening knows, you were the first African-American president of the American Bar Association. And for people that don't know your full story, you've been president of almost everything, which is an honor, but we won't get into those details right now, but perhaps during the conversation we will. But I wanted to start our conversation with you in light of what happened in Memphis, Tennessee, and the video that was released over the weekend regarding Tyree Nichols. You served as mayor of one of the major cities of our country, Detroit, Michigan, from 1994 to 2001. And you became mayor right after, 2 years after the Rodney King incident in Los Angeles. I imagine you have some thoughts and perspective on what we witnessed. And I would like to give you a chance to kind of just share your views on what happened in Memphis and the relationship between police and the Black community.
Well, I will tell you, I was troubled by everything that I saw on the video. And I will say that everything that we've heard about so far and what we've watched on television, the response from the city, response from the chief of police, they acted immediately to take action and to cause 5 officers to be criminally charged with offense of second-degree murder. And then there have been 2 others who have been charged, but without definition. And it might have been because of what they did see and didn't do, or saw and didn't intervene and the like. But I will tell you, it was very difficult to watch. I watched a person go through more than what we saw with Floyd in Minneapolis, with the knee on the neck for a long number of minutes, which caused him to die. And in this instance, you saw 5 police officers exercising, I can't quantify it. I just say that I was very disappointed. And I felt so deeply for the family. He was, as if the yardage was correctly reported, 100 yards from home. Right. And like Floyd, at the time that the officer had his knee on his neck and was calling out for his mother, here is another young man who was being brutally beaten, calling out for his mother 100 yards away, who, because of the lateness of the event and being at night, did not hear and did not know what took place. It is devastating for a city. It's devastating for a police department. And because we have so many wonderful men and women who belong to a police department, who day in and day out leave to go to work, not knowing, and their families not knowing, if they will return intact, because we've seen senseless actions against our police officers. But when something like this occurs, officers who do their job day in and day out suffer from the same kind of anger and frustration as we do as private citizens. And as a mayor, the mayor of Memphis, as the mayor of other cities where something like this has occurred, there is a need to reach out and to assure the public that despite the sense of frustration, anger, frustration, that there is still a large group of caring people who, in this instance, listened to his mother. And when the video was released, unlike when video's been released in other cities, they listened and they honored her wishes. And she asked him to honor her wishes because of the way her son had lived his life, and it would please show respect towards the standing of her son. And all of that's been very helpful. And of course, when you have national leaders like Reverend Al, Brother Sharpton's been around for a long time, and he's unfortunately been to a number of these kinds of events, and I'm sure it has to get to him too, as it does Ben Crump, who is performing his duty as a lawyer to protect that young man's life. So he did not die in vain, and to assure that justice is performed and to be helpful to the parents to make sure that they can get through this. So there's a lot of emotions that go through it. And so as other police chiefs in other cities have been interviewed, men and women, and you can see their anxiety and anger and frustration in their in their sense, but they also know what's occurring. And in this instance, unlike with Floyd in Minnesota, these were 5 Black officers. And the young man who lost his life, Tyree Nichols, was also African American. It does not make it any less, and it hurts just as badly. And these are the kinds of things that must stop, which lends itself to wanting to get rid of and put more responsibilities on our Congress to pass legislation that can go a long way to prevent these kinds of things from occurring. And it's so important that we as citizens listen to them. And those are the kinds of things, a lot of them just goes through your mind. And as a mayor who had to attend, wanted to attend, glad to attend the funerals to pay respect to the officers that we've lost in the line of duty, it's still painful.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your perspective. And you talked about legislation. You know, a few years ago, the ABA adopted a resolution to ask Congress to, and other territories around the country, to eliminate qualified immunity. I'm sure that's going to get a lot more attention now in light of what happened in Memphis and the whole George Floyd Act that Congress did not pass. I know the president did it by executive order on a federal level, but it's not been passed by Congress. That leads me to
before you be led to something else or a similar topic, let me just say for those who are listening, that is the benefit of being a member of the American Bar Association, as we are both, you and I, past presidents of the National Bar Association. But with the American Bar Association being the world's largest legal organization, have spoken out aggressively and have made a lot of changes in the laws in which we all abide by. And the American Bar has just published a act or published what has been called an action by the American Bar Association that tells the public in undeniable and very clear terms how the American Bar Association respects our people, respects the rule of law, and is a strong advocate on issues of importance, such as in this case, dealing with the issue of guns.
Right, right. You know, Mr. Archer, you've been a catalyst in moving the ABA forward to be more diverse and inclusive. You tell a story in your book that you attended your first ABA meeting in 1972. And then in 1979, after a few years of being involved, you walked into a ballroom and only saw 3 Black lawyers. And I think you and Rachel Patrick and a few others had to do something about that. And you have been instrumental in moving us to bring Black lawyers into the ABA in particular, but also lawyers of color more generally. I am a benefactor of your work, and I'm so grateful for what you did back in the 70s and 80s to push the ABA, to open its doors and its mind and to be more inclusive. I'm wondering, as you reflect back on your years of service, how do you see the ABA today? What are we doing wrong?
Juan, I think you asked me to look back. When I was in law school, I knew about the National Bar Association.
Right.
I knew about, in my city of Detroit in the state of Michigan, the Wolverine Bar Association, of which I was a former president of. And what I had learned before 1972 was that the American Bar Association did not allow lawyers of color to participate as members.
Right.
I'm not talking about being chair of a committee as you find, of a section as you find yourself today. I was privileged to be a president of the American Bar. But when the American Bar was first started, they did not allow lawyers of color, and in particular, African American and Latinos, to be members. And it wasn't until 1943 that the American Bar Association changed their application to allow lawyers of color to participate in the American Bar. Back in 1908, J. Clay Smith, former dean of Howard Law School and a prolific writer, wrote about 3 then referred to as colored or Negro lawyers who joined the American Bar Association. And when it was discovered, they were immediately ousted, and the applications were changed so that you had to list your ethnicity on the application. And it was very common when a person filled out an application to join, if the legal profession or the lawyers who were active in the American Bar Association in that community, if they didn't recognize a person, they would go to the office of that lawyer to make sure that that person was white. And it changed in 1943, and women were not invited in. White women were not invited in really and given opportunities for leadership until the movement started with, there was a lot of discussion. I was motivated by Chesterfield Smith, who was a president-elect of the American Bar Association, who came to the National Bar Association in Atlanta, Georgia, at our annual meeting and met with the board of the National Bar and indicated that the American Bar Association was dissatisfied with what they had done, wanted to make amends, and created in the policymaking body of the American Bar Association, its House of Delegates, a seat, and it was designated for the person that would be appointed by the National Bar Association to sit in the House of Delegates.
Right.
And he asked if that could be changed, and well, that could change everything. And would someone from the National Bar please come to the 1972 meeting to accept that seat? The person who had Chesterfield Smith come to the meeting, who was the president of the National Bar Association so he could make his appeal, was Edward F. Bell, who was a judge and African-American judge. And he was the one that the board, the new board that came in following his presidency, appointed him to be the designee in the House of Delegates. I came out because there was a lawyer by the name of John Kersel that I'd worked with in Detroit. And I passed the bar in 1970, got immediately active in the Wolverine Bar, the Detroit Bar, Young Lawyers, etc. He encouraged me to come out to that meeting because the incoming chair, Harry Hathaway, an outstanding lawyer from Los Angeles, California, said he wanted to demonstrate to young lawyers across America that the young lawyers section of the American Bar Association was open and would love to have more people to come in, be members, and like. And so I accepted the offer, came out, and that was my first meeting. When I left the National Bar Association annual meeting in 1972 in Miami, Florida, there were about 1,500 outstanding, brilliant lawyers that you read about in the newspapers in terms of what they did, men and women, judges, etc. People had their homes bombed because they were representing people who wanted to be registered to vote or wanted opportunities for jobs, etc. Left 1,500 and came to San Francisco, and in a room of 1,500 outstanding young lawyers from all over the United States and countries outside of America who respected the American Bar Association.
Right.
They came, and in that meeting, there were three of us, as you noted, who happened to be African American. One was an assistant professor at Harvard University. The other was a sergeant, I believe that was his title, but he was in the United States Army. And he was there to recruit for the Judge Advocate Corps. So lawyers would join, become judges, etc. And me. And I looked around, and the real decision for me at that point was, do I want to stay and be active in a group where there's only 3 out of 1,500 or so that at the meeting, or did I want to do something about it and open up things? I tell you who I thought about during that meeting, and that was Cora Walker. Cora Walker, a living legend from New York City, who helped open up doors by inviting her corporate clients to come to the National Bar Association annual meetings so that they could meet other lawyers who had firms that could do work and could do great work for the corporation. She was not trying to be selfish and hold on to it all for herself, but she wanted to open up. And so I said, if Cora Walker can do that as well as others, then I want the chance to try to do the same thing. That's why I stayed in, and that's the reason why I worked very hard to make a difference, to open up opportunities for you, I, and others. And we see now today that the membership of the American Bar Association is exceedingly, our small percentage of membership in the practicing members of the bar or licensed lawyers we have a higher percentage of that members of being licensed that belong and joined the American Bar Association that are active today. And,
Wow.
and the people who are there, such as yourself, have just been doing outstanding jobs that have opened up doors. And we, everybody, irrespective of ethnicity, but the lawyers of color and those who believe in diversity and inclusion, which is one of the 4 cornerstone goals of the American Bar Association, where they put their money behind. There have been a lot of outstanding leaders who've been appointed, who've been elected, and the like. In fact, our current president today, African-American woman, who was a former chair of the Section of International Law.
Right.
Denise Ross, and she is just remarkable. And coming behind her is going to be Mary Smith, who will be our first Native American to be a national officer of the American Bar. So we've had a number of outstanding men and women to be presidents of our association.
Well, so much of that is because of you, Mr. Archer. And so we are so grateful for that and your sacrifice and your commitment in that regard. And that kind of leads me to kind of want to ask you about your involvement. You made the point about you chose to be active in a variety of bar associations and community organizations. You did both the African-American bar work and the state bar. You were past state bar president of Michigan, Wolverine Bar, NBA. I think I did my math on this correctly. I think you're one of 3 past NBA presidents that have become president of their state bar. You, of course, your mentee and one of my big brothers in the law, Reggie Turner, and then Fred Gray was the first Black president of the Alabama State Bar. I think I've got the 3 of you are the only 3 from the NBA past president group so far. I'm wondering, what would you say to a young lawyer coming up? Why is it important to be involved in multiple organizations in the legal community, particularly for a Black lawyer, doing kind of the broader bar service work and their cultural affinity bar work? How do you balance that?
I don't think there's a need to balance. I think there's a need to be very active in all. And the reason for that is that as a practicing lawyer, or whether you happen to be an assistant prosecuting attorney, or whether you happen to be a judge, no matter what your occupation happens to be, there is value in meeting and learning from others and teaching others as well. And so there's been a change across the board in terms of seeing lawyers of color, for example, who are teaching the continuing legal education programs.
Right.
We'd all go and we would be there, but we wouldn't see anybody look like us teaching. Right. And we had outstanding scholars and lawyers who could do that. And so when you're in the practice of law, you are happy to receive clients.
Right.
And when you are in a larger base of lawyers, there's a better chance of getting more referrals, because a law firm, no matter how large it is, cannot handle all the business in a particular city. And they have what is called conflicts. Right. And so they can't represent all clients. And so there's referrals. That's where, Juan, you and I come in, and others like us, when they know us and they know our ability to try cases or whatever our particular specialty happens to be, we get referrals because we're in the different sections of the American Bar Association or the State Bar of Michigan. Right. And this I.S. Levy Johnson was the first African-American president of the state of South Carolina. You mentioned Fred Gray. Fred Gray was the first African-American president of the State Bar of Alabama. Right. We no longer have the first because of others who've gone down that route, have done an outstanding job. People respect and admire, and it opens up greater opportunities. But there's more to be done. Right. We've just gone through we've just gone through some challenges
Right.
in our country where, for the first time, to my knowledge, we had a president that did not seem to, and in fact, his actions and his words did not seem to be open as all the other presidents of the United States to open up opportunities and the like. And today, you see in some states where people, the leadership of the state, they're passing laws or want to pass laws that you can't learn about Rosa Parks. You can't learn about other things that occurred that's in our history that causes us to be better.
Right.
And so they don't want books to be used that could teach and educate so we can prevent these kinds of things from occurring.
Right.
It's almost the way things are slanted or being talked about in some states where people died and were lynched
Right.
and the like because they wanted to vote,
Right.
where they wanted an economic opportunity to do business with cities or states or other corporations, etc. We've got a lot to do yet to bring about change. And so I encourage all people who are lawyers who care about our country and care about the best to be involved and stand up for democracy, because democracy is awfully important. It is what has gotten us where we are today, and others who've come to our country, people who have been immigrants, because people like Henry Ford, way back before I was born, in Detroit, started building cars in a manner in which was paying $5 a day, which was unheard of. People coming from all over, from the South up to the North, coming from other countries to come work because they could take care of their families and the like. That's the kind of America that we need to continue to be reminded of.
Right. You're talking about the future when you share that perspective, and the title of your book is Let the Future Begin, which I believe was also part of your inaugural address when you were sworn in as mayor in 1994. My last question to you, given our time constraints today, as we commemorate Black History Month, if you had the ear of every first-year Black law student in the country and could speak to them, because they are our future, what would you share with them?
It's important to study to get the very best grades that you can. It's important to respect the requirement of what is called a bar exam in most states, with the exception of Wisconsin. So if you go to law school in Wisconsin and you graduate from law school, you're automatically a member of the bar. But in all states beyond that, you have to take what is called a bar exam. So you've got to study for that. And then clients who come to see us, or in our capacity, whether we're judges or whether we are prosecutors, US attorneys, people who are helping people who cannot afford to hire a lawyer. But being a lawyer requires us to be ethical. And it's awfully important to be ethical, not take advantage of anybody, but to be fair and be ethical. And you learn that on a regular basis. It becomes part of your DNA by being active in the Bar Association. And so as we are as you noted at the top, we start today, which is February 1, Black History Month. And I think back to Carter G. Woodson, who ironically came up and was able to institute Negro History Week or Black History Month a week to remind people how important it was and the contributions that we have contributed and made available to all We now have Black History Month,
Right.
and we see the benefits of what occurs, and the benefits are numerous to everybody. By the way, I want you to know something. The Kellogg Company just sponsored and released a study, and that study indicates that in I think about, I forget the actual year, but $8 trillion of new money will be available because of buying, selling, etc. if only America would work collegially together and get rid of biases and things that, because of color, because of hairstyle, how people dress, etc. If we would do away with that, our country would be even more successful than we would if we did nothing or fall into a trap of not doing enough to open up doors.
Right.
So I would say to any young lawyer graduating from law school, be proud to be a lawyer. Give back to your community. It's not what you're after to raise money, it's how can you help others? And by doing so, I'll remind you, I don't wear my religion on my sleeve, but I will tell you that I think it's in Micah somewhere where you may be asked at some point at the end of your life, what have you done, my good and faithful servant? I want to make sure I've got a whole lot that I've done good, because I don't want to be burning for the rest of my life.
Well, you have done good, and you've done good beyond measure. You have fought a good fight, and you have definitely kept the faith. I want to salute you as being the first African-American president of the ABA. You did something that I was taught years ago. If you're the first, make sure you're not the last.
That is awfully important. And you're doing that right now in terms of the podcast that you take your time in doing as chair of the Civil Rights and Social Justice section, to remind people of what your section does to help America become great again, or greater, and things that needed to be done and issues that needs to be changed. You're doing that, and you're opening up doors for others to be motivated to follow in your footsteps.
Well, I want to salute you. Thank you for sharing that. I want to salute Robert Gray, Paulette Brown, Reggie Turner, and now Deborah Enix Ross for being president of the ABA, African-American presidents. Of course, Paulette Brown, who's a dear friend of yours, and also another past NBA president, was the first Black woman to become ABA president. And you were also instrumental in making sure that she had that opportunity. And so we just salute you for allowing us to stand on your shoulders. I want to encourage everyone to buy and get your book, Let the Future Begin. And I want to highlight your book in particular, because what I love about you and writing your story is that oftentimes we just read someone's resume. And I've seen and read your resume a million times, but I got to understand your journey. And often I think someone's journey is much more significant than their resume. So thank you for sharing your journey with us. How can people find your book? Are you on Amazon? Should they contact you directly?
It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
But Amazon's very easy.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. Thank you for your legacy. We are so honored that you joined us today. And God bless you. And
let's have a wonderful African American or Black History Month.
Yes, we will. Thank you all for listening today. And please have a wonderful rest of your day. And like Mr. Archer said, please do your part to celebrate and commemorate Black History Month this entire month. Thank you all for listening.